Hi everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I'm glad you're here. Been looking forward to doing this one because I want to do this Wonky checkerboard. This is from, I think, the first block we did in the strip stash busting series. And I wanted to revisit this. So I have prepared some different strips to try out different things. This one will just kind of do a review of what we did the first time. Then I have a strip that, well, actually the strip set has basically 2 long triangles in it. Then I want to try just a little bit. This is a piece left over from last time, I believe. It's a pretty short strip set, but I want to do a couple of things just to see how it looks with that many strips. Then this one is just a standard 1 narrow, 1 wide, but I want to see, I can use this to try various things, various angles, how we rearrange the pieces once they're cut. So that one's just a play one, and this one has a very gentle curve in it, and it was intentional. Sometimes we make curves that aren't intended, but this was intentional, and don't worry, next time we will talk about curves if they make you nervous. This one's very gentle, which is very easy, but I kind of wanted to see what happened when we did curves on it. So let's start out with this first strip set, which is basically what we did last time. And this one, you'll notice we had 2 different widths of strips. So the purple was narrower than the white, so that when we cut at the angles and then flipped one, it made it wonky here where those seams didn't match up. And we will do that on this one. It's a little less pronounced on this one, but you'll notice that the blue is narrower than the white. And we're just going to cut at random angles. Cut off this first end at an angle. Rather than straightening it, I'm going to angle it. And then I'm just going to cut at different angles, different widths. Let's try a really narrow one. I do want to have at least a seam allowance in there. And I'm just alternating the direction of the angles. We can choose how we put them together from there. And I can do some really angled and some that aren't so angled. And sometimes I think I know how these are going to turn out, and it's not anything like them. So we're just going to see what happens. We probably have some intuition about it, but we'll play. I don't know that I even need to sew these together. Probably will some of them. All right, now, if we want to flip it so that we get that checkerboard effect. If I just keep going, let me start it down here, I think will be better. Actually, you know, this green mat probably isn't the best choice. Let me grab a piece of paper. White, well, white's not gonna work either. All right, we're gonna continue with this. We'll be brave. So I can get a circle effect if I just keep alternating, but I keep the wide part with the wide part always, and you're going to get a spiral or circular effect, which is kind of cool. I like that. And of course you have to deal with the curve, but we know there are a couple 3 ways to do that, and I'll talk some about curves. Though if you aren't comfortable with curves, this is not a particularly gentle curve. Next week, we'll talk about that next time. Now, if I instead alternate them, but I have some where the blue is at the wide part of the angle cut somewhere the white is. So if I alternate those, then I have to find some here. Then I'm going to get more of a curved effect going the other way. So it's going to do a wave. Sometimes it takes me a little while to figure out what I'm doing here. All right, now I need, this is white with narrow. Now I need white that's wide, and it's going to continue to go that way. So if I take the blue part is the wider, then it starts to come back around. So you could absolutely mix this so that it does almost a circle and then turns back on itself. Oops. And of course, the angle at which you cut it is going to determine how the curve goes. That's quite a curve there. So this one then, we can make it start to curve back. If you want to do very much of it, of course, you're going to have more than one strip set. So all kinds of things we can do with that. I don't know exactly. I kind of like this one. It's a little gentler curve, so if I decide to piece it into something, it will be a little easier than if I'm doing a circle or a spiral. I always have the option to applique, of course. I like this, and I think I might sew it that way, but I'm going to set it aside in case we want to play with that a little bit more and see what I have up next. Let's do one that uses the triangles instead of the straight ones. And boy, of course, if you want to do the typical checkerboard, you just do equal widths of strips and then cut at right angles. And we have the option with this, and it would be interesting to see how that turns out. I may have to do another one of these. I want to try this with a couple of straight ones first and see how that looks as we alternate it. It may not be wonky enough for me. You know how I am. So that will still give us wonky, if very angular kind of look. What if I introduce then some curves into it? I should say some angles into it, which will give it some curvature. And then I'll just do a couple of angles here. Flip those around. And of course I start to get a curve then. So you can absolutely mix straight with angled. What if we put one of the straight ones, if we alternate straight and angled? It's still going to look angled, but it won't be as dramatic as if you did just all angled turns. Kind of like that too. Let me add in one more straight and one more angle. Of course, one of them has to, well, it doesn't have to be, but if you don't want to waste fabric, you're going to have one that has one straight edge and one angled. So I can do that, or I can, here's the narrow part of it starting over here. This is gradually changing so that it's less of that color and more of that, except when you intersperse. So you've got lots of options. That's really kind of fun, isn't it, to have the, you've always got this separation between the pinks, but you have varying widths of those pinks. I kind of like that. So I'll set that aside and maybe sew it. I'm not sewing them right away because, pardon my elbows here, I may want to do some more playing with those. All right, now let's try one with this very wide strip, which do at least a little bit of an angle here to start. Not going to be able to get very many pieces out of this, but let's see how that looks. So I'll do some narrower, less angled pieces so we get more of them. This is the nice thing about improv. You don't have to worry about getting the exact correct angles, and so this will be quite wild and fun. Kind of like that look. Reminds me of stadium checkers. I might have to do that as a quilt. Anyway, next up, let's try it with the curves. It's a very gentle curve, so it may not really show up much, but let's give it a try. Now, angle this way, I'll waste less fabric. And then start some angles here. Now I can do the same angle. See what happens when I start angling that. So I've been alternating which way I cut, and I've got a couple in there that are the same angle. That for my crumb box. Let's see what happens with this curve. Now, this is not white. This is two different colors instead of white and a color. And they're quite bold colors. So there are two that are angled the same direction, which will start taking you up in a more angular slope rather than a curve. And I quite like that too. You really don't see much of the curve when you cut it. So a very gentle curve is not going to show unless you do very wide cuts. Kind of liking this one too. So that will go aside for sewing later. Running out of space here. And now we've just got this to try different things, and I'm not sure exactly what I want to try at this point. I'm sure you are calling out to me, as you always do, to help me and tell me what I should be doing next. Let's try some very angled pieces. Myself a crumb piece there. That's going to end up, imagine a pie. If we do it this way, then you can just imagine slices of a pie that are going to go in the round, which I think I don't really want. I know what that's going to do, so if I want to have that happen, I know how to make that happen. Let's see what happens if we do, well, we'll do again several of these, but I want to do one that's pretty narrow. Make sure I'm not doing so narrow that I don't have a seam in there, and then a pretty wide one. This will, of course, determine how much something curves. And then I really want to try alternating more of the straight and angled. And then let's do some angles this way. This would be a really fun thing to do with your strip scraps, as I'm doing here, and just keep trying different things and creating different blocks from it. And then just play with how you want to arrange them. Let me do some, oops, go in the other direction here. Try to make sure I'm still on camera while I'm doing this. And this would give you a definitely more angular look rather than a curve, which is its own piecing challenge, but certainly makes for an interesting piece we can always applique. Then a really wide piece there. Do a straight and an angle. Start up that way. That's kind of fun too. Much more angular look than we've been doing when we alternate like that. So I like that one too. All right, I'm going to sew some of these together and then I'll be back. Just a reminder here that when I'm sewing these together with these angles, I'm going to shift them so you have that 1/4 inch dog ear, and they will, once you unfold them, then they're going to have the correct corner there. Here are a few of the pieces that I sewed together. This is our more angular 2-color, and this one is the curved, the wave. And I like all of those. Not sure how I'm putting them together, what I'm doing for a block, but I like those effects. I was about to sew the other 2 sets together, but then I decided, well, wouldn't it be fun to see what happens if I take 2 different strip sets and combine them? So now I've got the teal and the pink together, and I can just alternate that. So in this case, then, the teal is, if I do it this way, the teal is always going to be on one side and the pink on the other. And there's quite a lot of difference between here. And the pink, if you remember, the pink was in triangles, so, and they were narrower strips, so we're not going to see as much pink as we do teal. And I think that's okay. These aren't this, oh, actually they're not too far off. There's a little bit of difference in the width of the 2 strip sets. So in this case, if I need to trim something, I'm going to tend to trim the blue rather than the pink in most cases, because there's more blue and I want to preserve the pink. So we could alternate them that way, or we could do this and then every once in a while put in a pink. And toss in a pink in there, which would be kind of fun. It's a little something more, a little bit more interest for, oh, in this way we can, if we do that, then pops the pink up there, which is interesting. Oh, nope. I knew something wasn't right there because it couldn't change sides like that. Okay. You were shouting out to me, weren't you? Okay. And if I wanted to start to curve it up the other way, I can change which sort of blue comes up next. So I can do a wave with those colors interspersed. So that's, I kind of like that. It's a little unexpected. So I might not even, I'm pretty uniform about doing 3 teal, 1 pink, 3 teal, 1 pink, and I might actually make it more unexpected than that. Just always looking for ways to interest the eye that is looking at this. And I might at some point put 2 pinks right next to each other. So that's a possibility. The other thing I wanted to try with this, one of the design things I like to do is put in a white and black checkerboard sort of effect, even if it's just like a strip set alternating white, black, white, black. It doesn't have to be a full checkerboard. And I'm wondering if no, I don't think could be. So I think in that case, I might cut the same things, but I would angle this way, which means that I'm going to lose a lot in the process. So I would be better off doing strip sets where I angle it, then cut those strip sets straight, yes? So I think I might try that, and there are a couple of other things that I want to try. There's just something about, I love black and white quilts with a pop of color in it, just a little bit of red or teal or whatever, but I also like a pop of black and white in a quilt with lots of these colors. Black just really makes colors pop, these, especially these jewel tones and brights. So there are a couple of other things I want to try, so I'm going to prepare those strip sets and come back. I tried a few different ways to do a strip set in order to do this angled wonky stacking that I want to do, and the stacking is a different story from going horizontally. So I think I'm going to do a separate video for that because it's a different sort of strip set. When you do those strip sets, you want to have angles and do quite a few strips this way and then have them at different angles, then subcut those and stack them. Would be much more efficient than this. This is not good because I'm losing all of that. It's not a good choice. This I can use, however, I can do another set of these. But because it was at an angle and I did different kinds of cuts, they're going to be, it could end up just being a little crumb piece. I don't know, but that's for another time. We will talk about that. I sewed a couple of curved pieces. This is a freehand curve, so it's probably not a very perfect curve. And then just sewed it, no pins. Next week or next time we will talk about this. It's not that difficult even with the steeper curve. We'll talk about it next week, but I wanted to just as a sort of segue into next time, not next week, probably on Wednesday. I thought we'd see how this looks in what we're doing today. So I'm going to angle this up a little bit and probably do some larger pieces so that we can see how the curve acts. And I honestly do like it best when I just alternate directions of the slope, the angle. So that's what I'm going to do on this one. I'll end up with a little bit of crumb maybe. And that I'm just going to set aside. This isn't many pieces, but I think it will tell us the story we want to hear. So this has a kind of double curved effect where you have curving going on here and then this whole piece curving. Just looking to see what would happen if we didn't do them in order. Then these are going to overlap differently. They're going to join differently. That makes it look a little wonkier. Not entirely sure I like it that way. Let me try this. So then you get much more difference in the location of those edges toward the center. I don't know, what do you think? This is a majority-ish sort of rule here. Love to hear your opinions. Don't know which one I'll follow. Ultimately, I'll do what I want, but oh, this is kind of interesting though, how these, oh, this looks almost Art Deco-y. Ooh, I like that. Love Art Deco. So, options there too, and curves are something we'll explore, as I said, next time. So you could apply it to this. You could apply it to just doing curves in improv piecing on their own, or maybe piecing these into something. Here are some of the pieces that we did today, trimmed up, and this one has real potential for another project I have in mind. This is my favorite, I have to confess. This one I trimmed some off of both top and bottom because the pieces were just too large. Somehow working with this size and then the larger size was not working for me. They may not even end up in the same quilt, but I just thought it was the pieces were too chunky. This one I trimmed in a curve. This one I did trimming in a more angular fashion because this just looks more angular than that. And I feel good about the things that we tried. Found some things that didn't work the way I had thought they would, thanks to the brain fog that I am in because of allergies in this weather. Next time, as I said, we will be talking about curves. We'll start with gentle curves using no pins. It'll be okay. And then we'll get into steeper curves. And I think I'll show you 3 different ways to do curves. Then the following, I guess that will be next Sunday, I would like to start introducing a weekly challenge. I don't know for how many weeks, but a few weeks anyway, where I give you a prompt for you to use to design a quilt. This is just design a quilt, which is draw the quilt, not to sew it, because I'm not going to be doing a quilt a week unless they're very small quilts. I'll start out with the first challenge, which will be next Saturday or next Sunday, and show you some of the quilts that I have made from past challenges of prompts that I either came up with myself or others gave me, and some of them are pretty interesting. And I'll also share with you some of my thinking about how I arrived at what I did. Now, mine are going to be modern quilts. These kind of prompts, I think, lend themselves to that pretty well. If you want to try traditional, that's an idea. I will maybe spend 1 week doing more of a traditional kind of thing. Interesting. Challenges are always fun. And it's a way for you to get more comfortable with designing your own quilts, which is what I love most about teaching and doing these videos, is giving people inspiration and the confidence to start designing your own quilts. So on Wednesday, I will see you for curves. On Sunday, I will see you for a challenge. And in the meantime, be well, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.